Well, hello everybody. Welcome back into the Color Gemstone Academy. I am Paul Deasy, your instructor, and this is my YouTube channel, which is called Paul Deasy Gemstones. First of all, if you're watching for the first time, I would like to ask a favor of you. If you would please hit that subscribe button. I know people get scared by the word subscribe, but we're not asking for credit card information. It doesn't cost you a thing. It just allows me to continue to do these lessons for you for free. Well, this week's episode is episode 66, and it is about a gemstone called Prasiolite. There is a Prasiolite, and it's one of those that I think that kind of travels under the radar. Maybe it's not been on your radar screen, but it's a really beautiful stone that is like no other. And it is a green variety of quartz. Now, Prasiolite is a relatively new gemstone find, and nobody really saw anything like it until about 1950. And they found that in Brazil and in some parts of Arizona, there was quartz that usually when they were heating like an amethyst to come up with a citrine, which I've talked about in other lessons, they would actually find some would turn green. So we're trying to figure out what was going on with that. And basically this quartz that came from Brazil, mainly Brazil and a little bit in Arizona, had a tendency to have some iron in it. So when they heated it, it would turn that beautiful green color, kind of like a light pastel green, or maybe a beautiful, gorgeous seafoam green. And here's another example. This is in a ring. Big, beautiful Prasiolite gemstone there. And if you look closely on the side, you're going to see some a little Savarite garnet set on either side of this particular ring. This is Judy's ring, so I couldn't actually wear it as a, well, I guess a pinky ring. It would work. Anyway, it's a gorgeous seafoam color. There's nothing else like it. You know, the chemical composition of it is quartz. It's silicon dioxide. So that means it's just like an amethyst or a citrine. It is any other quartz. But what isn't it? I'll tell you what it isn't. It isn't a green amethyst. No, you know what I'm talking about. I have to relate a story to a time when I was at the Tucson Gem Show, probably a dozen or so years ago. And I was being introduced to a gentleman from Brazil who had some beautiful, I forget who put me in contact with him, but he had some beautiful fire opal from Brazil. And I had seen a lot of fire opal from Mexico. I hadn't seen fire opal from Brazil. So this was a miner. He spoke, you know, serviceable English, but he's obviously Portuguese. Brazilian Portuguese is his natural language. And he said, I said to him, "Look, listen, I really love your fire opal. It's really pretty." He says, "Hey, if you think you like my fire opal, why do you see my green amethyst?" And so I said, you know, those of you who know me know it's like a nails on a chalkboard when somebody calls something green amethyst. There's no such thing as a green amethyst. Amethyst is the purple variety of quartz. Green quartz is going to be called green quartz or Prasiolite. Some people call it verda-like, verda for a Spanish word for green. So I said to him, well, you know, there's really no such thing as a green amethyst. And he says, oh no, you haven't seen my green amethyst. So he was completely undaunted. He missed the whole point. But it is not. I mean, it's not a green amethyst. So that's going to be my one stipulation. If you buy some, you cannot tell somebody it's green amethyst. It's actually against, you know, the rules to call something that it isn't. But anyway, I digress. I could talk about that for hours. Let's go back to some of the physical manifestations of the stone. We talked about it being silicon dioxide, which is a quartz. The crystal structure is trigonal. The hardness, or for those of you that are new to the channel, I always talk about this. Hardness is the Mohs scale of hardness, and it is a scale that goes from 1 to 10, 1 being talc, 10 being a diamond. This one happens to be 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness, like any other quartz. So it's pretty good for every single day wear. The toughness is also considered good. So the toughness is usually exceptional, excellent, good, fair, poor. So it's rated good on the toughness. It's also kind of a tenacity. It's the ability to withstand chipping and cracking. The refractive index, the RI they call it, is something that measures the sparkle of that gemstone. Like a diamond would be 2.42, I think it is, or 2.46, I forget. This is 1.55 to 1.56, so it's basically right there. That would be its sparkle. Specific gravity measures the actual density or the heft of the gemstone. And I always talk about, amber being about a 1 on the specific gravity, which is the density, or rubies and sapphires being a 4. Well, this comes in at 2.65, so kind of right there on the middle range of the density and heft of a gemstone. The main sources, as I mentioned, Brazil and Arizona, because there's a little more iron present in the trace elements when they heat this gem to become green. There have been since other discoveries. Some places in Poland have produced some places in Canada, I believe, they found certain species of prasiolite there. But other than that, it's not a very well-known stone. But there's actually good news behind it. Even though it's a little bit rare, it's really not that expensive. Okay, so now let's take a little bit of time to talk about treatments of gemstones, and specifically the prasiolite. I'm going to first start with that age-old philosophical question. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, does it make a noise? Okay, I'm going to give you a different kind of twist on that. If you put a stone and let it bake in the sun and it changes its color, is that really a treatment? Let me explain. So when Judy and I were in Brazil, we were looking at a lot of different amethyst mines, and we looked at an amethyst factory. You can see some video on that in some of the previous lessons. We then went to a factory that was processing citrine. And they showed them doing the washing of it. They're shaking it, and then they showed people cobbing this beautiful Madeira citrine color. And then I walked into the guy who owned that little, it's a small factory, just a few people working there. And I walked in, and I want you to look at this photo. Judy and I saw a table with some of the most beautiful green prasiolite I had ever seen. And so we got very interested in that. We ended up actually buying a parcel of it, but that's now gone. But anyway, we looked on top. They had metal roofs on top of the buildings. And we climbed up a ladder, and you could see, and I'll show you another picture of this, a ton of this Brazilian quartz material laying on top of the roof, beautiful green color. And I said, so what are you doing with that prasiolite up there? He says, well, that's how we treat it. I said, what are you talking about? He said, we just put it on the roof, and then the sun bakes it over days and weeks, and so I think it's a great color, and then I take it down. So I guess I started to think about this. Can we really call that a treated stone? If they're not doing any artificial heat treatment, they're just putting it on the roof and letting it bake in the sun. I said, how long do you leave it there? He says, usually 2 to 3 months until it's done. So it was really very, very fascinating to me. That's why I showed you the pictures, and you saw Judy on top with the camera, and I'm standing below her, just the nervous husband thinking, please don't fall, I got to catch you. But anyway, that was the extent of the treatment that was going on with the Brazilian quartz that turned out to be prasiolite. Now, I think since some of the other locations, again, there has to be iron present in order for that color to become green. But some other peoples are using artificial means of treating it. But in Brazil, they still do it the old-fashioned way, just baking in the sun. Okay, so where does the name prasiolite actually come from? We know colorless quartz or white quartz. We know amethyst. We know citrine, which is really sort of descriptive of the name. Well, in the case of the prasiolite, it comes from a Greek word, like many of them do, because the light is lithos, which means stones. And then in this case, prason is a Greek word for leek, like the vegetable, a leek, kind of a green, almost sometimes yellowish green color. And that's how it got the name Prasiolite. Now, again, the good news about this stone, I mean, it's not really plentiful, but it's not really high in demand. It's one of those that goes with fashion colors. If the lighter greens and the sea foams are kind of in fashion, a lot of people are going to, more people are going to gravitate towards that Prasiolite. But it's not really expensive. Like usually you're going to spend more for a really great quality amethyst than you would for the Prasiolite. The other thing I like about it, and this is true of most of your quartz, I showed you this sample just, in a tweezer, and that's kind of indicative of that beautiful, beautiful color. Here it is in a setting. Now looking at this, just to my eye, that's probably in excess of 8 or 10 quarts of a Prasiolite. 10 carats, did I say quarts? Probably about a 10 carat cushion shaped Prasiolite quartz. Even in larger sizes, the price does not raise so exponentially. It's kind of like that with amethyst too. So you can still get some pretty big pieces of Prasiolite for a relatively affordable price. And there really is no other gemstone on the market that looks exactly that color, that clean, that clear, and that beautiful seafoam color. Well, that's going to do it for this particular lesson, episode 66 on the Prasiolite quartz. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will add it to your gem collection. I think it's worth a look. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you all next week for the next episode of the Color Gemstone Academy. Bye, everybody.